Hello, everybody, and welcome back. It is once again time for the Wagon Sports Podcast. We are back once again to bring you another episode. Slade, Nick, and George all here once again. Had an action-packed weekend. We had NASCAR, we had golf, we had college football, we had NHL. We had NFL. NHL preseason did start, and so we will start our NHL season previews for you tonight as well. So a lot to get into. So I'm going to throw it over to Slade, and we're going to get the show on the road.
Yeah, so like you said, a lot this weekend. Just want to get started with NASCAR first. They were at Texas this past weekend, and Tyler Reddick ended up getting the win, but it was a lot of drama throughout the race, especially when it came to tires. I just want to get your guys' thoughts on the race. We saw Chase Elliott. He hit the wall while leading. Tire went down. Multiple people blew tires over the weekend, and it wasn't at like they were going too long with the tires or anything like that. It was 30
Mhm.
laps into a run. So, Nick, I just wanted to start with you and what your thoughts were this past weekend with the race.
Yeah, I didn't get to watch a whole lot of the race. Got to see bits and pieces of it. Um, uh, it's about how we expected it to go. Being there at Texas, actually more of a crap show than probably what anybody expected due to all the tire issues and whatnot. Um, Biggest thing for me was we get to see the playoff race shake up a little bit, which I guess is somewhat probably the only good thing that we can take away from this track this weekend. Tyler Reddick getting another win this season. Looking to end the season strong. You guys are going to talk about it more than I'm going to. I hate this race, especially for NASCAR. I mean, and you add on the tire issues on top of everything. We've had issues all season. You had a whole season to try to figure something out. Nothing's gotten done. Everybody's kind of getting tired of it at this point. So, outside of the on the track racing and playoffs and all that stuff, it'll be interesting to see how all this unfolds going into next year.
Yeah, George, what were your thoughts on the weekend?
Yeah, I mean, I didn't expect Texas to be a good race. I mean, we've had complaints for years about just the surface there in general and how crappy the racing is at Texas. I know it's announced after the 2023 race, they'll tear it down and reconfigure it. It hasn't been announced what that reconfiguration is going to be. Is it going to be a short track? Are they going to do like they were doing at Atlanta and make it like a super speedway kind of feel, which I really hope they don't. Um, but interesting to see what happens there. But we've seen the tire issues start to creep in through NASCAR throughout the season. It seems like it wasn't that big of a deal to start the year, and throughout the summer and stuff. But here the last 2 weeks, especially you think back to Bristol, I feel like there was huge tire issues there all weekend, and now it was amplified at Texas. I think it was a mixture of not just the setups and how bad the tires are, but how bad the track surface is there. Um, it's not an old track surface. I don't really understand why it was chewing through the tires as much as it was. Um, but the tire situation is definitely something NASCAR needs to figure out. It seems like every few years we go through this cycle where the tires get absolutely terrible. People complain about it enough, and then Goodyear is like, "Oh yeah, we're going to change it," and they'll do something, and then again we just go through the cycle where things are okay, and then they just go back to being bad. You think back to the 2008 Brickyard race. I feel like that's the last time tires were absolutely awful. They kind of got better there. Yeah, we've had seasons here and there where they were bad, but um, as much as we would like to see another tire manufacturer come in, like a Firestone, Bridgestone, somebody, come in and make another tire, I feel like that's just going to add more problems. We're going to go back to the early '90s tire war that we had in NASCAR, and that'll put even more safety. And speaking of safety, um, I don't understand how we've gone through this new and improved car, and everything's so much better, and it seems like safety has taken such a large step backwards. Um, we saw Kyle Busch just back in early August, late July at Pocono. Seemingly innocent, back into the wall. Everything's fine. He's out still with concussion. Hopefully he gets better soon. A lot of the drivers have been complaining that the shock is just a lot more violent in these cars. They've been complaining about it all year. Even NASCAR's acknowledged it, but like, yeah, we knew it wasn't going to be 100%, but we figured we could work through it, and that upsets me as not just a NASCAR fan, but for these drivers. If you don't feel like a product is 100%, why are you putting it out? Why would you not delay this another year? Why did you not work on any of the safety concerns after you delayed it a year already because of the COVID pandemic and all this other stuff? And I mean, I understand how frustrated these drivers are. They're taking, seemingly innocent bumps into the wall and they're flying back across the track, they're getting concussions, their cars are catching on fire. We saw Chase Elliott slam hard into the wall for turn 4. Again, yeah, it's not unusual to see a fire there, but as quickly as that fire spread throughout the whole car was scary to see. We saw Cody Ware take an absolutely violent wreck. And we saw before worse hits than that, and guys would walk away from the wreck. Cody Ware takes a hit off the outside wall, comes in and hits the pit wall, and has to get stretchered out. Goes to the hospital. It's very concerning to see. I feel like that's going to turn a lot of these older drivers, especially away from NASCAR here soon. I listen, my body can't take this year in year out for much more. And we're going to lose some really good drivers here sooner than what we should. But it's definitely there's multiple concerns across the board that NASCAR needs to address, and I hope they do soon. But again, I wasn't expecting much out of Texas. We had some good restarts, and racing was good for the first 5-10 laps, and then after that, it was terrible. But like I said, it's nothing I didn't expect out of Texas. But the safety and tire concerns definitely need to be addressed going forward, and hopefully they are.
Yeah, I think that, like you had said, the safety is the biggest issue. We heard from it seems like Kevin Harvick the most this season about the safety issues and that a little hit into the wall. Now, obviously, we saw some major hits this weekend, but a little hit should not have them aching until the following Thursday.
Mhm.
There needs to be some sort of change in that aspect, and I think, like you had said, uh, they could have waited another year, but I think that just the reasoning that there's no competition now anymore between manufacturers or anything. I mean, really, the only thing that they're able to do is the engine work. Everything else is from everything's from the same exact place. You just put it on the car and you have to drive it that way. You cannot modify it at all. So,
Yeah, I mean, I understand that from a competition standpoint, and it definitely has leveled the playing field. But a lot of these things, and I understand you don't want to open the door for cheating and all this other stuff, which we've already seen crew chiefs and stuff. That is their job, is to figure out a way to, okay, how can I tamper with the rules a little bit here and there. Um, but I really hope over the off season, especially, they can sit down with a lot of these engineers and car chiefs and the people that work on these cars, be like, okay, what do we need to improve here? Again, I'm not saying they should have full, openness to go in and change whatever they want about the car. Like, hey, okay, let's improve the safety features here. Like, yeah, you just got to get over the fact that you can't build your own exhaust system or something like that, something stupid that's going to give you 5 extra horsepower over the other car. That's the whole reason we went to the system. This is we had a more level playing field, and I respect that from NASCAR, and I do like that. We've seen a lot of random winners this year, a lot of midfield cars from last season, or even towards the back of the midfield up there competing for wins, top tens regularly, which I really do enjoy seeing. I'm not saying, Joe Gibbs Racing should go out there and be able to manufacture all their own parts so they can go out there and just dominate the season. But they definitely need to take a look at the safety features, sit down and say either let them kind of tinker with that stuff, or just, have a full board meeting. Okay, what do you guys want to see improved, and so on. But yeah, I love Kevin Harvick's openness about it, and the t-shirts he's making are pretty cool. So definitely, I mean, I don't think anybody thought these cars were going to be perfect coming into the year. Um, but there's a much bigger gap, I think, between what people were expecting and what the car is. That, especially with a year delay, that I don't think should be there, and hopefully it can get closed even more before next year.
yeah, and I just wanted to touch on that. Like at the end of the race, we had saw the updated playoff standings and everything like that. It had later come out about the change from points a little bit, just based on the penalties that were handed out. William Byron being one of them as the playoff driver, he was docked. I think it was 25 points. That was for wrecking Denny Hamlin under caution. Someone that we're not going to see on this list, but also got points was Ty Gibbs. He put Ty Dillon. I guess he bumped into his car on pit road,
He
and
door
so we
slammed
saw
coming down
that.
pit road.
I also saw that he must have did the same thing to Eric Jones at some point during the race under yellow flag, and Eric Jones had tweeted out and said, "Don't ever touch my car underneath the yellow flag." So it'll be interesting to see if Ty Gibbs has a response there. I saw Brad Keselowski was talking, and he had said that it just looks like a teenager got handed the keys to a car and is just kind of doing whatever he wants. Not quite the words that you want said about you when when you're possibly taking over the 18 car next year with a lot of sponsorship needed for that car. Do you guys have anything else on NASCAR?
I mean, just on Ty Gibbs real quick, I mean, nobody's wrong about how spoiled he is. I mean, we kinda knew it. He's been a hothead in Xfinity and ARCA coming up through, and I mean, we understand he's just a golden child basically from or grandchild from Joe Gibbs, and I understand that, but if he doesn't get it in check soon, people are gonna start wrecking his race car, and it's gonna get to the point where if Joe Gibbs doesn't do something about it, his paycheck is or his wallet's gonna start hurting because, uh, you know, I feel like Denny Hamlin has talked a lot this season about like, oh, I'm getting tired of being pushed around. But the things that he's doing, hitting people under caution, hitting people on pit road, just not having any respect for anybody out on the racetrack. Sooner or later, he's going to get put into the wall, and if he doesn't stop, he's going to get put into the wall again. And sooner or later, I understand Joe Gibbs is going to get upset that hey, my race cars are getting torn up, but they're getting torn up because there's no repercussions for what's going on here. So he needs to get it into check, or otherwise there's something coming for him. I can already tell.
Yeah, and I guess on him, the reason why his penalty was so significant because I think he was docked like 50 points and $75,000, which was significantly more than William Byron's,
Yeah,
was because the 17 of Chris Buescher was on pit road when they were passing by when they did that. All of his crew members were across the across the wall to fix a wheel. So yeah, it's just something that he was definitely worried about that one of his team members, since he's now an owner and driver, could
yeah.
have possibly been hurt with that situation. Um, Moving on to what was electric in terms of Team USA chants. George and Nick really got Twitter going with a lot of tweets afterwards. Team USA and the international team wrapped up the President's Cup this past weekend. It was kind of a blowout from the beginning. They got up to a big lead, and then kind of mid-weekend, it seemed like the international team was kind of clawing their way back, and then towards the end of the weekend, they were able to close it out. Team USA was able to get the win. What were your guys' thoughts? It looked like Team USA from a standpoint, just in terms of live and them not being able to participate. It looked like Dustin Johnson was probably the only one that possibly would have been on the team. Uh, that was excluded for being in Live. So the team that they had was pretty stellar. You had Max Homa coming off of a win going in, had amazing time there, and then you also had the duo of Justin Thomas and Jordan Spieth, who just seem unstoppable, and they're really good at talking smack to the other guys that they're going up against when they're in that duo. And then you also had Kevin Kisner, who is just dang near unbeatable when it comes to this style of play. What were your thoughts on this weekend, George?
It was a really fun weekend. Being here in Charlotte itself, I mean, there was a ton of events going on around the city. We went to one event on Saturday at the one brewery they had Chippo set up. They had a closest to the pin with a golf simulator. There was a bunch of random golf companies out there. I ended up stopping at one and getting a pack of balls. I'm going to try them out tomorrow when I go out. But it's so cool to just see a city get so enveloped by golf. I mean, there were so many people just at this one event out there having fun. Um, the stands all weekend at the President's Cup were packed. So it was a lot of fun just to be around the city itself. As far as the golf tournament goes, I think it was a great tournament. Like you said, USA started to run away with it early, but the international team, I think people just expected them to lay down and just kind of be like, oh, you know what, we're missing all of our big stars because of Live. Nobody expected them to come out and compete, and they did not give up. They did not. They fought the whole way through to the end. Um, they got it within a few points there on Sunday, and then Xander Schauffele put it away for Team USA. But the atmosphere was really cool to see. Like you said, it was we knew how good uh, Justin Thomas and Jordan Spieth are in these situations, and how good they are at the Ryder Cup, Presidents Cups, things like that. Uh, a lot of people coming in felt like Max Homa was just kind of like, oh, we don't have anybody else to put in here, so we just kind of slid him in. He goes 4-0 on the weekend and wins all four. Sunday, he was down, I believe it was 3 strokes at one point. He doubled, bogeyed, and then doubled his first 3 holes, and he comes back and he wins. So that was awesome to see. Morikawa played really well. And then the after party so far. I mean, we're still getting videos from that and everything, but just hey, we're rivals on the golf course, and as soon as you get off, even the international team, Team USA interacting with them. It's so cool to see like these guys are best friends off the course. I think it was Kisner was making jokes. I think he called Sung Jae Im like the hottest MF out there, and then Siwoo Kim walks up because you're the ugliest, and like that stuff like that was funny, and just how these guys interact. It was really cool to see, and that's what we love about these events.
Yeah, I just wanted to say quick that I did say Kevin Kisner is really good at this style of play. He did not play very well in terms of his specific matchups this week, but,
No, he
he
said he
made the
was
comment. He made the comment. He scored a half point
in
and,
the party. Yeah, he scored a
and
half point in the
that
part, or he scored a half point
he
on the
scored
course.
he scored the rest of the points in the party, that he's the
Yeah.
best partier there. I was really surprised to see Scotty Scheffler not gonna win. He got the tie there, but yeah, that was the most surprising thing to me, I think. Nick, what were your thoughts on the President's Cup?
Yeah, so entertaining weekend overall. It was great to be able to witness that for the first time. Um, I I just imagine like so the first tee, the way they had the stand set up around there, like I had seen somebody before they had got on the course. They kind of showed what the stands were supposed to look like, and somebody describes it as walking into like the Coliseum, like a gladiator or whatever. Um, which I could kind of see it, after I looked at it. If you were standing at the tee box and like looking back, like I get where they were going with that. But to walk through something like that, knowing, you're getting ready to tee off for arguably, though it's not necessarily important, like, for anybody's careers or championships or anything, um, the players take this very seriously, the competition, between the United States and the international team, and to walk through there, get ready to tee up, everything's going, your heart rate's up, and next thing you know, somebody starts singing the first TT song, and then you remember, oh crap, I'm playing around like I would be playing with the boys on a Saturday. So I can't imagine for these players that there's probably any better feeling other than maybe winning a Masters or winning the FedEx Cup or whatever. Um, but being able to walk out there and spend a whole weekend really just having fun, um, you know, everybody's relaxed, doing the thing that they love to do, getting paid to do it. I can't imagine a better weekend. And I'm sure all these players would kill to be able to continue to go back and do it.
And then one thing I didn't realize until Sunday is that they actually changed. I think it was 16, 17, and 18.
Yeah.
Normally, it's a different finish, and then all of a sudden I'm watching, and they're on the normal 17. It's labeled like 15. I'm like, I'm sorry, like that's not the 15th hole. Like, what's going on? And then finally, like Sunday morning, an article popped up. I was like, oh, okay, they changed it. I didn't realize that. So that was definitely a different layout, and it was cool to see. And they said, it really helped the match play. And I'll be honest, it absolutely did. We saw a lot of these matches go down to the final hole and they needed to make a putt on 18. But it'll be interesting to see. So I went to Quail Hollow in 2021. So it was like still like kind of COVID restrictions and everything. And so obviously they didn't have the stands like they did for this. So I'll be interested to see next May when I go back to the Wells Fargo if they'll have that kind of same setup or how different it is for just a President's Cup to like a normal,
hmm
weekend tournament. So
Yeah, so I'd actually read that they did that because the 16th, 17th, and 18th hole are um, like very widely ranging in scores. They could be very important holes, and
mhm.
some of these rounds that they run tend to be over by say the 15th, 16th hole. So they wanted to make sure that those three really nice holes were included in it. So I thought
Yeah,
that
I
was
mean, they did a great job, and it was cool to see
oh
that.
yeah.
It's just like 18 at Quail Hollow has become so iconic. I think with the creek running down the left side, and then it cuts across the fairway towards the end. And I think the first one I saw was Justin Thomas's match on Sunday, and he's coming up 18. I'm like, where's the creek? Like what? Like this doesn't look right. And then all of a sudden, like I was like, oh, okay, they changed everything. But yeah, that was just different to see. And like 17 is like an iconic island green, and these guys are playing 17. I'm like, what is going on? I was so confused for the longest time. And then finally, I was like, oh, they changed the course.
Keeping George on his toes.
Yeah,
Oh, yeah. Yeah, it was definitely a good weekend for golf, and, it was really fun, like George
beautiful weather here
mentioned.
too. I'm sorry to cut you off, but it was beautiful
No, you're
weather
good.
here. It wasn't too hot. It was nice breeze. It was wonderful out there. I think Sunday morning. I think the early matches they were wearing sweatshirts and stuff. I was like, I'm
Mhm.
sorry, what? But
Yeah, like you said, it was really nice afterwards to get to see all the videos from the partying and stuff that they were doing. I mean, it looked like they took 2 champagne glasses and filled up the cup, and then Kevin Kisner chugged it, so, um, yeah, it was really fun to see. Do you guys have anything else that you'd like to talk about in terms of the golf, or are you ready for what is probably your guys' most exciting part of this week's
I think I'm
podcast.
ready for the most exciting part.
Yeah.
So, it is time for the NHL Eastern Conference preview. George and Nick are very excited for this. I need to find a team still, so they're gonna help me out with that here. But are we doing that first?
Yeah, we're gonna do that first.
Okay.
All right, so we will go through the same kind of quiz we put Nick through last year. So first things first, do you want a team like kind of local to you, or do you not really care? And I will say this: so if you like Nick picked Seattle last year, Seattle is guaranteed to play everybody at least once, especially on the road. So if you pick like an out west team, like they will come to Pittsburgh or they'll come to Philly or Buffalo at least once a year. So
Yeah, I don't care because I don't want to limit myself to where I end up getting the Penguins with it like you.
oh, wow, okay.
I
Um,
feel like it'd be
Could
better
be a
if
worse
we
team.
all did a different team.
um, well then next up, do you want your team
Easier
to be
trash talk.
yeah? Do you want like a perennial contender? Do you want a team that's kind of rebuilding? Or like a team that's like they're not always exceptionally good, but even like the rebuild years, they're not like super terrible.
Um, I don't know how to answer that question, but I like the bottom part of the page that we're looking on, the south portion.
So you like
Yeah.
this year?
Yeah, like with
Eh,
the Blackhawks, the Minnesota Wild, the Dallas
Oh,
Stars, the
but just
Avalanche.
just this one.
Yeah. Oh,
Oh.
do I need to pick 2?
No. I just these are all the teams, so I just put everything.
Yeah.
All right. Well, okay. Well, then we'll make this easy. Do you have a color preference?
Mm,
What do you
yeah,
look good in this grade?
I usually stick with basic colors like black, gray, blue. Um, yeah, I feel like
Okay.
that's
So we got a blue and gray here with Winnipeg. They have a great fan base. Uh, they're always like on the edge of being a playoff team or not, like just missing. I've been have never really sucked here lately. Um, they missed the playoffs last year, but great fan base. I think they missed the playoffs last year. Great fan base. They're okay. Vegas is just scumbags. Even if you wanted to pick them, I'm not letting you pick Vegas. I'm not letting you fall into
That's a
that
good
trap.
excuse for us to go out to Vegas, though.
It is, but we could just go see our own teams playing Vegas.
Yeah, fair.
St.
For the
Louis.
dollar, damn it.
St. Louis is like a perennial like good team. Even when they're doing like rebuilds, they're not terrible. Nashville is kind of like in the middle of that conference again. Dallas, I would say the same thing is in the middle. Minnesota will always have a really good regular season, and then they'll just crap the bed in the postseason. Chicago is in a long rebuild right now. They have stars, but they're not going to be good anytime soon. And Colorado just won the cup. Um, so, I mean, you messed me all up, but
I messed you up.
yeah, I mean, I had all these questions ready, and you're just like, oh, I just want this section. I'm like, oh, okay.
Yeah, he was feeling the bottom section.
So so good. I would say good fan base. Uh, in the middle, good fan base. Good fan base. Bad fan base. Good. They're fair weather fans. They're Chicago fans. They're fair weather. So these are your good fan bases. They're in your middle, and like I said, this we're just gonna delete this. You're not gonna be a Vegas fan.
All right, we'll stick with the good fan base ones then.
Okay. So you got blue and gold here, blue and silver, blue and gold, green, and then blue.
Did the Wild have to like sell the farm and everything to get like Fleury and the other guys that they got to
No,
make the playoffs
they,
this
they
year?
no they traded. So here's the stupid thing about the Wild. They had a playoff team. Like Cam Talbot
Mhm.
was like one of the top goalies in the league, and they just traded for Fleury anyway. Which I mean wasn't a terrible decision because it's good to have a 1-2 punch a goalie, especially in the playoffs. But they pissed off Cam Talbot, and then they had to play Fleury all the time. But I mean, they gave up a couple draft picks and things, but they not anything exorbitant, I would say. Um, Winnipeg has Mark Scheifele, who can be like one of the biggest douchebags in hockey. Oh, okay, there's my dollar. The Blues don't have like anybody that you would want to hate. Uh, Predators, Matt Duchene can be an a hole, but other than that, they're fine. And then you have the Avalanche still.
So I think that it's kind of between the Blues or the Avalanche because you said Predators have somebody that's a bit of a douche, and then you have the Winnipeg Jets, who just don't really have anyone that I would be able to buy a jersey from, that I would know or be able to pronounce their name. And then you said the Wild, that they have a good team, and their team decides that they're going to pick up another guy to piss off the rest of their team members, or at least that positional player.
He said, I
Pretty
want that
much, yeah.
negativity in my life.
Yeah, pretty
Yeah.
much.
I got something in my contact, I think. That's all right. I can still half see.
I feel like I'm. Sorry.
No, I was just trying to think of something. Go ahead. What were you gonna say?
I was gonna say I feel like I'm leaning more towards the Blues just because I don't want to pick the team that just won the championship last year.
That's fair enough. That is completely fair enough. Like I said, they have a great fan base.
I'm already a bandwagoner when it comes to NBA, so I don't want to do it again in the NHL.
Yeah, that's fair. So now that we got that decided, that was a lot easier than I thought it would be. So Slade is now a St. Louis Blues fan. So there we go.
There we go.
Gotta get my
All right.
jersey.
Yeah,
Wait, whose jersey would I get from there?
Ryan O'Reilly, he's a good one to get. Jordan Binnington is their goalie. He's young.
Oh wait, did he get hurt in the playoffs?
Yeah, he did get hurt last year. He got taken out by
He got hit
Colorado.
in the head, right?
Yeah, by Colorado. So there you go. Now you already hate Colorado.
There you go. Perfect.
But
I'm struggling over here, boys. It's
I
rough.
see that. Gretzky played for them for years. You can get a Gretzky Blues jersey. Might have been more.
Wanna go rinse your eyeball out.
Yeah.
I see him taking his contact out. I saw it all sideways in his eyeball.
Could
That's
you?
some high-res camera right there.
Is that what it was?
Yeah.
I believe it. I thought my right one was going to give me issues, but that's all right. Anyway, keep going. I'm here for it. I can do this.
So George, we'll
Maybe.
start with you with I guess we'll start with the Eastern Conference most improved teams for this year. And what are your thoughts there?
Yeah, I am going to go with Detroit and Ottawa. Ottawa added a lot through the trades and signing free agents this past year. Their owner died just before the end of the regular season last year, and he had a stranglehold on that team. He was not a very well-liked person in the city of Ottawa. He let a lot of stars walk. Eric Carlson years ago. This is a team in 2017 made it to the Eastern Conference Final. I had to look at my Penguins banners for a second. I can remember the year. 2017 makes it to the Eastern Conference Final, loses in Game 7. And then the next year, they don't even make the playoffs, and they haven't been back to the playoffs since. So this is a fan base deserving of a good team. They finally have an owner, and the GM, had free reign this past year. He just put money into this team. They drafted really well. They got a lot of really good free agents. Claude Giroux is now there. So they got some veteran presence. They also didn't have a terrible youth group with Brady Tkachuk, Tim Stutzel, Josh Norris, and Drake Batherton. And then they also signed they traded for Alex DeBrincat from the Blackhawks, excuse me. And now they've also improved from having Matt Murray, who I think only played like 6 games for them last year anyway. They got rid of him. They bring in Cam Talbot, who had a .911 save percentage and 32 wins last year for the Wild. We just talked about him a little bit. So I think he's going to do wonders for Ottawa this year. As far as the Red Wings, they added Ville Husso in goal, Ben Sherratt, Oli Mata on defense, Andrew Kopp, who we saw do great things for the Rangers in the playoffs, and David Perron, who just left from St. Louis, has been a staple there for years. He's a workhorse winger, but he's a veteran guy. He's been to the playoffs multiple times before. He's won Stanley Cups. So now they bring in all this experience. I think this is a Detroit team. We saw flirt with the wild card position for a little bit, and then kind of fell off throughout the year. They're also bringing in a new head coach. So Steve Yzerman has really poured a lot of attention and money into this team. That they're tired of being the laughing stock kind of the Eastern Conference. They want to get back to that historical way, that they had through the '90s, early 2000s, especially. People don't look at them the same. That their postseason streak ended at like 26 seasons. And so this is a city, this is a team that wants to get back to those winning ways. They put the effort in, and I think it's going to pay off this year for both of these teams.
Yeah, I like the slight flex there that you had to look at the pennant from the Penguins to see what year the Wings lost. Nick, oh wait, he's gonna show us. Yeah. Oh, nice. Nick, so who's your most improved team in the East?
Yeah, so I went with the Columbus Blue Jackets here. I can't remember. I always get the divisions mixed up, but I couldn't decide one for the other division, so I just went with the Blue Jackets overall. Um, the main thing for me is the addition of Gaudreau. I think George and I talked about it back when we were doing the hockey podcast. This was a team that um, some of the bottom level Eastern Conference teams started to slip up towards the end of the year, and they were closing the gap on them. At the time we first mentioned them, I think, if I remember correctly, they were like 13 games back. And a couple weeks later, they were within single digits. So they were close to playoffs last year. I think the addition of Gaudreau is going to elevate them from where they are to where they're looking to be. I don't know if they're necessarily going to be title contenders yet this year, but they have pieces around Gaudreau to have a great team, to be a playoff team, and to continue to build from that. So that's why I went with them.
Yeah, I mean, I put some notes down, but Gaudreau and Patrick Laine, I think, are going to be a great pair on the wing. Um, Laine could easily be a 50-goal scorer. Gaudreau likes to set up these passes. Laine hasn't had anybody good on his team to set him up for years now. A lot of people thought he might want out of Columbus, and now all of a sudden Gaudreau shows up. They signed Laine to a long extension now too. Um, so they're definitely going to score a lot. They just need to improve on their defense a little bit, but this is definitely a team that can very much contend for the wild card this year.
I like it. I like it. I'm learning a lot. So next up would be the most declined teams for the Eastern Conference. Nick, we'll start with you on this one.
Yeah, so originally when I decided this, I had chosen Carolina. I forgot to tell George to update this when I updated everything else. I do think that Carolina is going to take a step back, but what I had changed it to was the New York Rangers. After digging into things a little bit deeper, they lost a lot of key pieces on their team and didn't do anything to replace those key pieces. Now, not necessarily, some of their biggest point scorers, but a lot of their important depth players, and even some top rotational players that they just didn't replace when they let them go. But both of those teams, either way, since I didn't have a second one name for this one either, I can include them both. Like I said, they were both playoff teams last year. Carolina at one point was looked at to possibly be one of the best teams in the league. The Rangers were kind of right below that top tier level, but we've seen in the playoffs, they made a lot of their opportunity, but I don't see either one of those two teams competing for a cup. Carolina might be able to do it. They're definitely not as talented on paper, but I definitely think New York is going to struggle this year compared to what we've seen out of them in the past couple years.
Yeah.
Yeah,
Go ahead.
I was gonna say I wish that we would have done this a little bit before I'd picked my team, just so I could make George sweat with possibly picking the Rangers.
Okay.
George, what were your thoughts here on the most declined teams in the Eastern Conference? I see you've got the Flyers and the Panthers.
I do, and people might be surprised because the Flyers were already at the bottom of the division last year. I honestly think they're going to be the worst team in the NHL this year. They, waited and they waited. They were trying to sign Gaudreau. They didn't sign anybody else. They were putting all their eggs in one basket to sign him. He decides to sign with Columbus, and they were left holding their wiener in their hands because they didn't spend any of their money. They lost a lot of really good players, or not really good players, but the only notable names on their team. And then they go out and they sign John Tortorella to be their head coach, who is probably the worst head coach they could have ever signed. He has failed everywhere he's gone, and so this is going to be an awful team to watch this year. I also picked the Panthers just because they lost Jonathan Huberdeau and Uyghur. They gave all that up just to sign Matthew Tkachuk. Matthew Tkachuk is a great player. I think he's going to do really well in Florida. And this is still a team I have making the playoffs. I just don't see them being the President's Cup contenders. They won the trophy last year and they fell apart in the playoffs. They also have a new head coach coming in. It's going to take a little bit for that team to gel and get going. Again, they're a playoff team in my mind, but they're not winning the division. They're not winning the President's Cup, definitely. And so that's why I have them as my most declined team.
I like it. I like it. I did forget that, like you had said, the Florida Panthers won the President's Cup, and then we didn't see much out of them in terms of scoring when it came to the playoffs.
Yeah, well, they swept the first round and they got swept the second round, so we saw them for 8 games.
Yeah. Yeah. So next would be the playoff teams and division winners, right?
Yes.
So, who is your guys' best picks for playoff teams this year when it comes to the Eastern Conference? George, we can start with you.
So in the Atlantic Division, I have Tampa Bay winning the division until somebody shows me that they're not one of the best teams in the NHL. They continue to bring in their really top tier talent year in year out. Until that team gets decimated by injuries, or just the core retires. I have this as being a playoff team and an Eastern Conference contending team. Uh, Same with the Maple Leafs. They're good enough to get to the playoffs. They're not good enough to win in the playoffs. Like I just said, the Panthers, I think, are still good enough to make the playoffs. And I have the Red Wings. I think, like I said, with all the additions they just brought in, they improved their goalie situation. They went from being ranked almost dead last in goals allowed and penalty kill. And I think they're going to be much improved this year. We saw them flirt with the wild card line last year. I think they make it in the wild card this year. In the Metro, I have Carolina winning the division. Yeah, they've had some losses, but I still think they're just good enough to win the Metro in the regular season. The Penguins, again, not a lot of turnover. They made some really good signings. They were able to bring back Letang and Malkin. So I'm excited to see them come back to finish their careers there. They've re-signed Ricard Raquel. We got to see good flashes of him, and then he got hurt the first round of the playoffs. And so I'm excited to see him with a full season under his belt in Pittsburgh. The Rangers, again, yeah, they've had some significant losses, but I still think they have a good enough core there to make the playoffs. And I have the Blue Jackets again. They just brought in Gaudreau and Line, and they flirted. I have them knocking off Washington to get into the playoffs this year.
All right, I like this. It shows here that you guys kind of agree on 6 of the 8. So, Nick, what are your thoughts on the 8 that you have chosen?
Yeah, so in no particular order, I have Florida, Tampa Bay, and Boston as my three locks as far as that side goes. Boston kept their core together. They were a playoff team last year, not necessarily one of the flashiest teams, but a playoff team nonetheless. Tampa Bay, they were competing for their third championship in a row. They didn't lose a whole lot. I don't think they're going anywhere. Florida, like you said, a couple question marks as far as some of the moves went. But they're still going to be a good team. They won the President's Cup last year, and it's not like they lost their entire roster. So they're still going to be competing. As far as the other side, again, no particular order. I got Pittsburgh, good team, kept their main pieces together. Carolina, I just talked about them. They're still going to be playoff contenders and possibly even chip contenders. We'll see as the season goes on. I also added the Blue Jackets as one of my locks. I think that, like I said, I talked about the Rangers and how I think they're going to decline. I don't think the Rangers are going to be a playoff team this year, especially looking at how low the expectations were for them last year, and then they lost pieces they didn't fill. I do think they're kind of right on that line, so I don't hate George for putting them in. I'm kind of surprised that he didn't oversell the losses they got a little bit to make himself feel better, but nonetheless. And then last but not least, in the two wild card spots, I have Toronto. They're Toronto. They're one of the most talented teams in the league offensively. They're going to score points. They don't have to play any game sevens in the regular season, so lucky for them. And last but not least, I have Washington. George said he has the Rangers beating out Washington. I was kind of on the same boat. It was kind of between those two teams. I just happened to pick Washington, just because they have some leadership there. They have some good young players. But at the end of the day, I think the top 7 teams that I just named are going to be pretty much in there, and that competition is going to be between the Rangers and Capitals. I think it could go either way. I just went with the Capitals on this one.
I mean, the reason I had the Rangers, one, I can't talk shit about them because they beat, and there's another dollar. I can't talk bad about them because they beat us in the playoffs. I almost made it $2. But in the same thing, so they still have Zibanejad, they still have Panarin, they still have Shesterkin in goal, who's one of the best goalies in the league last year. Um, Unfortunately, they still have Trouba on defense, so I mean their defense is a liability, but he can just go around and knock players' heads off, and then they'll be fine. Um, but for me, they kept their core together. Yeah, they lost some of the outside pieces like Cop. I think Cop is going to be a big loss for them, but he also came in at the trade deadline last year, and so I think their core is good enough to carry them to another playoff. Um, they still have Alex Lafornier, who was not terrible through the offseason, but he was just missing. Like for being a number one overall pick, you would expect him to be, on the goal sheet just about every night. And he just wasn't there last year until the playoffs. The playoffs he really came on. He's a big reason why they were able to get to the Eastern Conference Finals. Um, and so I think there's just enough of that team there to push them over the Capitals. I think the Capitals' age is going to start showing here. Not Ovechkin. Ovechkin, you think his age is going to start showing every year, and he goes out there and still scores 50
He
goals.
just stands on the same spot on the ice and just keeps hitting
It,
one
it's
time.
been oh my god, that is the most frustrating thing. Is he that's his office, and I get that, but like how every team in the NHL has not been like, okay, listen, just follow Ovechkin. Like I don't care if he leaves somebody else wide open. Like how do you not guard
If he
Ovechkin?
is in that quarter of the ice, like just
Yeah.
be right there. Don't even
Um,
leave his hip.
so I'm not saying Ovechkin's gonna fall off, but Kuznetsov is starting to get a little old. They brought in Darcy Kemper for a goalie. Listen, the only reason that he's a Stanley Cup winner is because that offense carried him. He definitely struggled throughout the season and the playoffs. He might be an upgrade for them over Ilya Samsonov, but I don't think it's enough. And I think there's some question marks on their defense too. So that's why I had the Rangers over the Caps.
I like it. I like it. You guys are already arguing over. Yeah, geez, I just had a stroke. You guys are already arguing over who's going to be that last team to make it in. So right now, obviously, there's going to be deadlines. There's going to be trades. There's going to be injuries. Who are you guys looking at as being the Eastern Conference champion? Nick, we'll start with you.
Yeah, I still haven't figured out what answer I'm 100% confident in. But if I got to choose somebody, the way the teams sit right now, based off of current success and their roster, I can't not take Tampa Bay. We've seen them 3 times in a row. Uh, I think they have a very good chance to make it 4 times in a row this year. Barring injuries and whatnot, they got one of the best goalies in the NHL. They got a good scoring offense, a good solid defense. If I had to put money on a team right now in the Eastern Conference, my choice would have to be Tampa Bay.
And George.
No, I'm going to agree with him. Again, until Tampa Bay shows me that they're not the perennial contender year in, year out that they have been for the past couple years. I think if the Penguins can get past the first round of the freaking playoffs, that yeah, we have a great shot of getting to the Eastern Conference Finals, to the Stanley Cup Finals. We just can't make it out of the first round the past couple years. Tampa Bay has shown consistency year in, year out, and like I said, until somebody figures out a way to slow down Stamkos, Kucherov, and their goalie Vasilevsky, again, until they show me they can't do it, I'm that's who I'm gonna put. And so yeah, I'm agreeing with Nick here. I'm gonna put Tampa Bay as my Eastern Conference champion for now.
And hearing that, George, did last year the Rangers beating the Penguins, did that play any into your effect of you picking the Rangers to make it into these final 8 teams here? Just hoping that karma didn't come back and then them end up getting them first round again.
No, I mean, like I said, this was a really young core they had last year, and they were able to take it. That's why people didn't think they were going to be as good as they were last year. They're still a young team. Then they get into the playoffs, and it's like, okay, they're young. They don't have playoff experience, and they make it to the Eastern Conference Finals. Like I said, they lost big pieces, absolutely. Um, but I think they brought in enough with Trocheck, especially. But there's still enough there with Zibanejad, Panarin, and Shesterkin. Just those three guys are enough of a core to carry this team back to the playoffs again. That's why I have them going back.
All right, I like it. I like it. Do you guys have anything else to add when it comes to the Eastern Conference and the NHL season? Obviously, we'll get to the other side next week, but
You better bring notes. You better know all about the Blues next week. I'm quizzing you.
oh, it's the only team I'm researching.
Yeah. Western Conference champion, Blues. Playoff team,
See,
Blues.
so
Blues.
I'll
Most
be in
declined, Blues.
Florida, so I'll see if I can get a jersey by that time.
Oh, you can.
Yeah.
Unless you get the Chinese ones like I buy, and then it takes 6 months to get here.
Yeah.
I'm still waiting on my Oregon jersey to come.
Oh, really?
It'll be here next season.
Yeah, honestly. I think it said October 6th. At first, it was supposed to be September 6th. I was like, okay, perfect. I'll get it right after they beat Georgia, and then it got blown out. And I looked, it was October 6th. I was like, yeah, I delayed them on 2.
Yeah, they probably did that on purpose. They were like,
They
you
did.
know
They're
what,
like,
buddy?
oh god, we saw that. We're just gonna hold that here at the post
Yeah.
office for you.
We're gonna save you
Uh,
some.
So moving to something that I'm kind of excited. Next 2 topics, actually, but I kind of want to see how I kind of forget with my picks last week how I did. So I'm interested to see the tally for last week's preview
I know. I'm
and
always thinking
how we
about that.
did.
I'm like, man, I wonder how I did this week. It's nice in
I
the
don't know.
college one because he'll go in and like highlight, so we can keep
Mhm.
track. But we
I
don't do
like
that
to
for
I
this
like
one.
to keep it a secret for the
Yeah, that's
NFL one.
fair. That's fair. I'm pretty
Yeah.
sure I didn't
So
do too hot.
I think that this week was just catastrophe for me when it came to bets. The Steelers lose a big one on the road against the Browns this past week on Thursday, and then you had the Bills just almost come out flat-footed on an offensive standpoint. That or they just have that tough of a time scoring here recently. It was just surprising. We saw them come out and beat the Rams first game of the season, and now they've just kind of slowly started to have some troubles. We saw their offensive coordinator throwing tablets and stuff. Ever since we saw Tom Brady throw a tablet the week before, or was it? Yeah, they started implementing a fine to any player or staff member that throws a Microsoft tablet because Microsoft is getting upset that their property is being damaged on a weekly basis. Um,
Make better crap.
yeah, we saw the Giants get the win. The Bucks and Packers. That's the most interesting thing because I've still yet to
I'm
hear
sorry. Hold
what.
on. Hold on. Back. The Giants got the win.
And I made the
Oh,
look, but I was gonna correct him when he
sorry,
was done.
No,
sorry.
I wasn't waiting.
Yeah. Cowboys got the win without Dak again. The quarterback ran through the tunnel like he was going back to the locker room without doing any sort of interview, and so then they had to catch him and get him back out there. His last name's Rush, right?
Hmm.
Cooper Rush,
Uh,
yeah,
yeah,
MVP.
yeah, yeah. So it was interesting to see. I think what I wanted to ask you guys about in terms of these games here was the Packers and the Bucks game. We saw virtually no scoring from from what we would have thought last year, looking at the Bucks offense and the Packers. Obviously, the Packers have had a hard time scoring after the loss of Devontae Adams, but Aaron Rodgers after the game stated that he saw something on the jumbotron that they probably shouldn't have played up there, and that it could have possibly aided in them ended up getting the win. It was when the Bucks were I think it was when the Bucks were trying to do a 2-point conversion. But what were your guys' thoughts on
So
that
he
situation?
he went on Pat McAfee. He does that every Tuesday. It's
Mhm,
Aaron Rodgers Tuesday or something like that. I forget the exact name for it. But he said like essentially it wasn't anything to do with the play clock. It was just a tendency that they were showing, and I guess the jumbotron kept showing replays. And so he was like, "Hey, like this is what they're doing." And he kind of the defensive coordinator and head coach were standing side by side, so he went down and told them. And that's at least from his interview on Tuesday. That's kind of what he said was all about. Um, and I guess the reason he said like it's happened to us at home a bunch of times is obviously like hey a play happens like we want to show a replay for all the fans to see and stuff. So I get that, but as far as the game goes, I think it's Aaron Rodgers and Tom Brady's age is starting to show because the Bucks offense is trash. The Packers offense is trash. It's difficult to watch at times. Like I turned the game off after the first quarter. That was some of the most boring football I've seen in a long time. Um, and I feel like that's been the case across multiple teams in the NFL, but I guess those two just more so because a lot of focus is on them. Um, as far as the other games, uh, Denver just needs to pack up their season and get rid of Russell Wilson. Um, San Francisco could probably pack it in for the year as well. The Rams really looked good. Of course, Kyler Murray was distracted by Call of Duty beta. And the bad news is they play the Panthers this week, and it's double XP weekend. So they're gonna have back to back losses here. So that's really gonna suck for the Cardinals. Um, the Steelers Browns game, the Browns looked really good running the ball, and then they would go away from it for a little bit, and they go back to running it. And then I feel bad for all the fantasy owners of Chase Claypool, who, or especially I guess a lot of people bet the over on his yards. And
Right.
he was right there, and then he threw the lateral, and it counted against him. Um, as far as the Bills, I think it's just their clock management. Like the Dolphins defense, I think is very underrated, and the Bills defense was missing a lot of players. So the fact that they were able to hold the Dolphins offense like they were, yeah, I know Tua went out for a little while. First of all, he should not have been able to come back. He went from barely being able to stand up and just magically appeared back in the second quarter, um, or second half. He should not have been allowed back in the game. Um, but and I understand that the Bills' offensive coordinator's frustrations. how do you not understand at this level of football, clock management? Why are we dumping it 5 yards in the middle of the field and expecting the guy to get out of bounds when you need to kick a field goal to win? Then we had the butt punt too, which was great. Mark Sanchez feels a little bit of redemption. It was a big redemption week in the NFL. We had the butt punt, so Mark Sanchez felt redeemed, and then we had Jimmy Garoppolo walk out the back of the end zone. Dan Orlovsky felt redeemed as well. Just a weird weekend in the NFL.
The pure force that you could see in that man's ass cheeks.
Oh, it absorbed the ball.
Is that a cuss word? Is ass a cuss word?
No, I'll let it slide.
It's a body part. We discussed that before. Yeah.
Yeah.
So yeah, you could see it was a good, perfect football indent in this man's cheeks, like that, and it had to hurt. It looked like he was trying to play it off, but listen, I've gotten hit with balls being punted before, and that ain't fun. So
He didn't flinch either. He just
I
it hit
know
him. He's like, "What was that?"
he took it. He took it. Maybe he's used to it. I don't. Maybe Slade's got another
Maybe he hangs out
cool
with Dwight
story
Howard.
for us. Yeah.
No, I can't. But one thing I did want to ask you guys both, because we see on our board here that we had picked for the Steelers-Browns game. But George, I wanted to ask your opinion. You saw the Bears get the win this past weekend, but
I
so
don't know if that's what you
far,
call it, but
I mean, they scored 23 points this weekend, and that is the amount of receptions the Bears have through 3 weeks. It's pretty interesting when I heard that stat that um, they've gotten 2 wins and somehow only have completed passes 23 times in the 3 weeks. I just wanted to see what your thoughts were on that, and then I have a question about the Commanders for you then, Nick.
my thoughts are this team sucks. Um, I can't stand watching them. Uh, Justin Fields needs a lot of development still, and hopefully we can get him there. Um, I don't want to see us give up on him too early like we did on Trubisky. But yeah, this team sucked. That game Sunday sucked. Both teams were like, "I don't want to win this. You go ahead." And no, you. And it was just it was tough to watch. But yeah,
It
both
looked like
teams
Bill
sucked.
Belichick was calling the offensive plays for
It
both
really did.
teams.
Yeah. So yeah, that was not easy to watch.
And so, Nick, what was your thoughts on the game this weekend? Obviously, they had a rough weekend in at home against Philly. They just could not get offense moving. But they right now sit at what is it, 1-2, right?
Yep.
So I'm just wondering what your thoughts are on how they're progressing so far this season, with their only win being against the Jaguars, which the Jaguars are somehow really good in their division right
Yeah.
now. So
I got Jaguars right now to win that division, but we'll see how that plays out. No, so first of all, whether you're Washington or Seattle or whoever you might be, when 50% of the people at your home games is from the opposing team, that's not good. Normally, what typically happens is we have about 3/4 of the stadium full, about 50% of the stadium's capacity is Commanders fans, maybe about 25% of that capacity is opposing fans, and then just empty seats. But when you're so close to Philly and Philly's full of just obnoxious cantankerous people all over the place, um, who I've said this multiple times. It's on some of my social medias. The entire city of Philly, every last person in the city of Philadelphia, from the mayor down to the lowest level cheesesteak maker, all live rent free in Carson Wentz's head. I imagine every dream he has is from the city of Philly. He probably sees the Liberty Bell, maybe the Statue of Liberty, whatever, every time he goes to sleep, and it was apparent. He was not on his game whatsoever. He was holding on to the ball too long. When he did make throws, they were all over the place. We had -1 passing yards at the actually, I think we had -16 at the half, -1 like halfway through the third quarter. Um, and from an offense where you have the quarterback who's second in the league in yards and tied for first for touchdowns, and to go into a game like that and just get absolutely shut down was embarrassing. And that's on everybody. That's on Wentz. That's on Scott Turner. Even my boy Jahan Dotson and Terry McLaurin had drop passes for first downs. The entire offense as a whole was not there. The defense, mind you, they gave up 300 and some yards in the first half, but all things considered, our defense actually played really well considering how they played the last 2 weeks. All 24 points the Eagles got were in the second quarter. We held them in the first quarter, got a little tired because the offense wasn't doing nothing, and then came out the second half. The offense started to do a little bit. Defense was more rested. but we can't allow that 24 points, and we can't continue to go scoreless in the first half of games. It's just going to get tougher to come back as each week goes on. I'm hoping my boy Robinson comes back. He got shot twice, and the man's out there doing agility drills already, which is absolutely ridiculous to me. But hopefully,
He's working harder than I ever would if I got shot.
yeah, dude got shot twice, and 2 weeks later he was out like jogging. I was like, man, I got
Didn't he
shot
show
twice.
up like 3 days later to the team facility with like donuts or something?
Yeah, it just showed up like
Crutches.
on crutches. Yeah, it must be nice to be a super freak. But anyway, hopefully that'll help the run game. Chase Young, although I've fallen off the Chase Young hype train last season, but I do think that he will add to our defense. I think half of our defense is playing out of position. You got Kendall Fuller, who's arguably one of the best slot corners in the NFL, playing on the outside. You have St. Juste, who's a second year, who played well last year on the outside, and you bump him inside to the Buffalo nickel. I have no idea what Jack Del Rio is thinking, but I have sent many angry letters to Ron Rivera and the Washington Commanders. Hopefully they get him and take him seriously. But yeah, I'm this close to going to Walmart and buying a foldable table, ripping my shirt off, painting my chest blue, and diving through that bitch. And I will pay $1 for that because I don't care. I'm frustrated.
All right, so all it
So-
takes to get Nick on a rant is just bring up the Commanders.
Yeah, just say Commanders, and I'm gone for the next half an hour. Just
Yeah, so I think that next season you'll see better in terms of fans in the stands. I think that what probably happened in my eyes is, I mean, they changed from the Redskins to the Washington football team. Everyone went out, they bought the $150 jerseys or the $100 sweatshirts, and then the team goes and changes to the Commanders, and they're like, I'm gonna give it a year just to see if they keep this name because I don't want to go and buy another $100 jersey and then have
Yeah.
to
I mean, if they want to increase attendance, they got to build a new stadium first.
Yeah, oh, yeah.
Nobody wants to go to a game.
and in all fairness, like
sewage
this
is
all
involved,
comes
they
right?
might
down
need
to
a new
Dan Snyder.
owner.
Yeah, because
No, they need a new owner.
I was reading something the other day that like
While you're doing this, I'm getting my
Dan
card.
Snyder's literally having issues getting funding for the stadium, basically because everybody's like, yeah, F you, like,
Yeah, and none of the cities or municipalities want to pay for it.
yeah,
So we'll go into our standings. So I lead the way at 11-11. This is supposed to be updated. You're at 10-12. And Slate sits at 9-13. I don't know why I was so excited to see this, but I don't think he's going to want to see it anymore.
Yeah. He's probably more looking forward to the college football one.
Moving on, let's get into our game picks for this week. So the Thursday night game is Miami at Cincinnati. This will be 8:15 on Thursday on Prime Video. So I hope you're excited for another video lagged from the audio. Cincinnati
Terrible.
opens as a 3.5-point favorite. The over-under is 47.5. Cincinnati is wearing their all-white uniforms, by the way. They're white Tigers. So let's get your picks. Nick, who you taking?
Yeah, so the first thing I want to say just about Amazon Prime real quick. Jeff Bezos specifically, obviously he had some say in this endeavor that went on, like the man owns Amazon. Billion-dollar man, billion-dollar company, and you can't line up your audio and your video. I don't know. I don't know why it is. I could care less, to be 100% honest with you. It's Thursday night. I'm just trying to watch some football. Get your crap together. But anyway, I'm going with Miami in this game. I thought Bengals real hard, especially with them white unis. But we've seen they're not the same Super Bowl team they were last year. George said it perfectly. They're the team this year that we thought they were going to be last year. Yeah, you still have Joe Burrow and Jamar Chase and Joe Mixon that are going to make plays. But that offensive line is horrendous. Miami has lived up to their hype so far, for what everybody thought they were going to be. I had my doubts, about Tua and Tyreek and all that, but they have been that team that everybody thought they were. I think they go into Cincinnati, handle business. That I don't know if it's necessarily going to be handedly. Joe Burrow and that white is something fierce, but I do think they walk away with it.
All right, I'm going to interrupt this just like ESPN interrupted our college football all day Saturday. Aaron Judge has officially just hit his 61st home run of the year. I know you all care very much about that, just like we cared very much to have our college football interrupted on Saturday. That still pisses me off. Moving on, Slade, who you taking?
So, like Nick, I'm going with Miami. My reasoning is I had already picked them just based on their offense and their ability to score, and the fact that Tua can literally get a concussion, can't walk straight, and they're still going to put him out there in the field, and he can still beat the Bills, who have had an explosive offense up into the last 2 games. Um, I think that the main thing that I didn't pick the white tiger unis, which are really, really cool, is Joe Burrow. We saw in the Super Bowl that the line just cannot block for him. This dude is getting hit every single game and getting hit hard. And
This year's
so
line is worse than last year's line.
yeah, and so I think that while like Nick had mentioned, they have a lot of firepower, a lot of stars that they could get the ball to. If he can't get the ball to them, it doesn't matter who's on the who's out there running routes, who's running. He can't get the ball out of his hands fast enough. He's just getting beat up. And he made the comment that he bruises bad. I mean, I I think it'd be crazy if they put videos out of just like what his leg or his arm looks
Yeah.
like after these games because he is getting destroyed.
I am gonna take on Thursday night the Bengals at home. You can't go against the white tiger uniforms. You can't wear a uniform that good and lose. If you do, you need to just stop playing football. So that's
I
why
don't
I'm
know.
taking.
Oregon's done it a time or two, haven't they?
Yeah, but
Ooh.
so here they have cool uniforms, but once you wear like a cool uniform every week, like I feel like it kind of loses its
Yeah,
touch.
that's fair.
Like I
Uh,
really wish they
I'll
would just
allow it.
have like a solid home and away uniform, and like, hey, for like homecoming and like a night game, let's wear these special uniforms. A different uniform every week, I'm not gonna lie, is a little bit much, even as an Oregon fan. Um, but
Can't even
when you,
collect all them jerseys. Like,
yeah,
damn.
but like for these, especially NFL teams who like very rarely come out with an alternate uniform. When you're wearing all white with tiger stripes on it, like Bengals are about to do on Thursday night, you cannot mess it up. The crappy part is we're barely gonna be able to see it because the freaking video feed from Prime Video is gonna be so janky. Moving on, the next game. We have the Titans at the Colts. This will be Sunday, 1 p.m. on Fox. Indianapolis opens as a 3-point favorite. They just beat the Kansas City Chiefs. The over-under is set at 42.5. Nick, who are you taking?
Yeah, I went with the Colts on this one. I can't lie to you. I could have flipped a coin. The only reason I really went with the Colts is because they're gonna have that momentum from beating the Chiefs. They're gonna be at home. The fans are gonna be wild because they're like, "Oh yeah, Matt Ryan's bringing us to a Super Bowl." They don't realize that they just, somehow came away with a miracle. But nonetheless, this Titans defense is still good. The offense is absolutely terrible, but nonetheless, Derrick Henry, I love the dude. He's a beast. This year could be his last year, and I would not complain about it. But nonetheless, both of these teams are competing to who's going to try to beat the Jags out for the division, in my opinion. But I think the Colts come away with it at home this week.
Slade, who are you taking?
Yeah, I agree. I think it was a coin flip. We saw, yeah, so the Titans.
I was gonna say, I was like, wait, did I put the wrong graphic in?
No. So I think that it's a coin flip. I think that the Titans have just run into the problem that people have caught on that they're literally going to hand the ball off to Derrick Henry every play. And so if they they clog the holes, I mean, you get enough guys on him, they're going to be able to take him down. Obviously,
Yeah,
it takes more than one person to take Derrick Henry down, but if they get enough people in the hole, they're going to be able to get him. George. But yeah, I think that Matt Ryan is going to be overrated. I think that they caught a team in the Chiefs that maybe looked past the Colts, and so I think that that might have been what happened last week.
looked right past all the dudes in their hole.
Yep. I am taking the Titans, and for the simple fact that I just saw over the weekend, it's called the Derrick Henry Vermont Snow Theory. That Derrick Henry always has like a rough start to the season, and I didn't know this was true. I just thought it was this year thing. But as soon as it starts snowing in Vermont, like you get the first snowfall in Vermont, that's when he becomes really good. They had the first snowfall last week. He played really well last week. He did really well for my fantasy teams. So I'm fully buying into that now. I think Derrick Henry's back. So I'm going to take the Titans on the road, and that's going to completely backfire on me.
Gotta
Moving
believe in
on,
Ryan.
we have the Commanders at the Cowboys. Nick, we know you're taking your own team.
Yeah.
So Slade, who do you got?
Yeah,
I don't want another 30-minute rant, so we're just going to move on to Slade.
No, I was gonna keep it short, but I'll just let Slade go.
I'm going with Dallas. Sorry, Nick. I saw last week's Commanders game for the first half, and like you had said, there was no passing, and when there was passing, it was backwards. So that's what had me pick the Cowboys.
I'm actually going to go with the Commanders on the road. I think they're coming off a tough loss. They got to figure it out against Philly in the second half. Um, I think Cooper Rush's magic is starting to wear out. That was a pitiful offensive performance on Monday night. And I think the Commanders have a little bit better defense than the Giants do, and I think they have a better offense than the Giants do. I think Jahan Dotson and Terry McLaurin get it together on the outside. They air it out a little bit, and I have Washington winning this one on the road.
They still might give up 6 sacks to Parsons alone, but
Oh yeah, I mean they absolutely will. We might see
But they'll
um,
burn Diggs.
Taylor Heineke in this week. Oh yeah, I mean everybody burns. I could go out there and burn Diggs.
yeah.
That's a bold statement, but I'm going to stand by it. Next up, we have the Bills at the Ravens. This will be the 1 p.m. game on CBS. Buffalo opens as a 3.5 point favorite. The over/under is at 52. Nick, who you taking?
Yeah, I went with Buffalo on this one. To sum it up, I still think they're the best team in the league. Clock management and a bad throw at the very end of the game by Allen is, the difference between them being undefeated and them having one loss. The Miami team is, nothing to sneeze at. They're a good team. They're going to be contenders this year if everybody stays healthy. The Ravens, to me, yes, they've looked good. Yes, they always start the season out looking good. Usually because they play scrubs or lower level talent at the beginning of the year. They haven't beaten anybody, at least that I can think of. I should have looked this up before I said it out loud, but nonetheless, I don't believe they've beaten anybody that impresses me yet at this point in the season. They always find a way after the first couple weeks to start fumbling games away, and this is going to be a really mad Bills team that's going to want to come out and win. So I think that's what they do.
Slade?
Yeah, so I'm going with the Ravens. Nick, just to go off what you were asking there, the Ravens have beat the Patriots and the Jets. They
So what?
lost to the Dolphins by 4. Um, so in terms of scores, yeah, that's pretty even with the Bills. But just the last 2 weeks, I haven't seen the offensive push that they had last year and the first game of the season against the Rams. I think that just like when Flacco was with the Ravens and he was in a contract negotiation year and he ended up screwing the Ravens because he had his best year, they signed him for a massive contract and then he just sucked after that. I think we're going to see Lamar Jackson have his best year this year and they're going to have to sign him for like $300 million. So, um, yeah, that's why I'm going with the Ravens.
I'm going with the Ravens at home too. I think they're still upset about how they lost that Miami game. I think this is gonna be a high scoring shootout. I would absolutely take the over on this game. Um, but I think just the fact that they're going into a difficult environment in Baltimore is just gonna be the difference. And so that's why that's the only reason I have Baltimore over Buffalo. I think this is a completely even game. Other than that, like you said, I still believe Buffalo is probably one of the best teams in the NFL. Um, but they have some question marks on defense as well on who's going to be healthy this week and fully capable. Yeah, they have some guys coming back from injury, but are they going to be 100% ready to go? I think that's the only you know big difference maker outside of the environment as to why I'm taking Baltimore this week at home. Moving on, this is the only decent 4:30 game that we had. We have the Patriots at Green Bay. Green Bay is a 10-point favorite. This will be 425 on CBS. The over/under is at 40, which I would probably take the under on this game. But Nick, who you got?
Yeah, I went with Green Bay on this one. I think it's going to be very close. I think Patriots are going to cover that spread. Um, we just haven't seen any offense out of Green Bay. Their entire offense basically has ran through Aaron Jones, or Dylan for that matter, whichever back happens to be in. But that run game is what gets them going. They were missing, or Aaron Rodgers was missing his top 2 receivers last weekend. But let's be honest, even those top 2 receivers are maybe low tier wide receiver twos. Um, I just, we know Bill Belichick, what he does with his defenses. They typically don't let teams score all over them. I think this is probably going to be similar to the Green Bay Tampa Bay game, except I don't think the Patriots are going to score as much as the Bucks did. So if I had to guess, this is probably like a 14 or 17 to 3 to maybe 7 if the Patriots get lucky game. But I'm going Green Bay.
Slade?
Yeah, I also am going with Green Bay. I think it could be closer than the 10-point spread there. We just haven't seen the offensive firepower out of Aaron Rodgers and the Packers. But I think Bill Belichick is in for a couple year rebuild here, and Mac Jones has a high ankle sprain. I don't think we're going to see him this week, and if we do, I think it's going to be at a limited capacity. I don't think he's going to be throwing the ball long. I think it's going to make it a little easier from a defensive standpoint for the Packers this weekend.
I'm going with the Packers at home too. Again, I think it's a close game. Both of these offenses stink. Like I said, I'm taking the under on this. It's a defensive struggle the whole game, but I think Green Bay is just a little bit better than New England. Moving on to
Back
the
New
Sunday
England.
night game.
Yeah, that was the jinx.
Yeah, there we go. Hey, if the Bears can get another game on them, I'll take it. The Chiefs at the Buccaneers. This will be the Sunday night game on NBC. Kansas City opens as a 2.5 point favorite. The over under is at 45. Nick, who you taking?
Yeah, I ended up picking Tampa Bay on this one, and I got to be honest with you, it's probably not the most confident pick I've made on this podcast. But just had a feeling about it. We seen the way that they played against Green Bay. They really didn't allow a whole lot of ball movement. The two drives that Green Bay scored on were really the only two drives that they had a chance of scoring on. Now, granted, Kansas City has a whole lot better passing attack than Green Bay does right now, but we just seen them struggle against the Colts, and I think Tampa Bay's defense, especially with Todd Bowles, but at the helm controlling everything, he's going to game plan efficiently to take Mahomes out of the game as much as possible. Really, the big question mark is on the offense. I don't know what's going on with Tom Brady. I blame it on his divorce and everything he's got going on off the field. But we just haven't seen him, whether he's had his receivers or whether he's had, his backup receivers in. He looks exactly the same. He's still missing throws, things that we don't see Tom Brady normally do. And I think this Tampa Bay offense is going to continue to struggle, but I think they're going to, be able to ride their defense a little bit and manage to come away with a close one here.
Slade?
Yeah, I'm going with Kansas City. I just haven't seen any offense out of the Bucks, and I think Kansas City, in my opinion, I think they were looking past the Colts, and so I think that they just got run over last week and thinking that they were going to go out and be able to throw the ball and not have to worry about a defense even being there. I do think that they're unable to score as much without Tyreek Hill. They're not going to want to admit that the entire season because that's not what they're going to want to do. But I think that the 2.5 point spread is too close. I think that Kansas City is going to easily win this one by a score or two. I think that Patrick Mahomes can throw an interception or two and still throw for 350 yards and 3 touchdowns to get the win. So I'll be interested to see that.
I'm taking Kansas City too. Hopefully Eric Bellamy. I don't. That's probably not saying that. Nate. The Kansas City offensive coordinator and Patrick Mahomes kind of get on the same page this week. They get their differences figured out. Um, Tampa Bay's offense stinks. I have the Chiefs easily covering the 2.5, and so I have Kansas City winning on the road. And the Monday night game again. Why we're putting San Francisco on prime time, I'm not exactly sure. And how they're opening as a 2.5 point favorite. Whatever.
Jimmy G
Um,
Magic.
yeah. So this will be the Monday night game on ESPN. San Francisco opens as a 2.5 point favorite. The over under is at 42.5. Nick, who are you taking?
Yeah, I went with LA on this one. I'm on the same page as you. I don't see how San Francisco open as 2.5 point favorites. They look like crap. They just lost to a Broncos team by 1 point that honestly, in my opinion, has no business winning any games this year. Russ looks terrible. The entire offense looks terrible. The defense has been, doing their job, but nonetheless, San Francisco, their entire offense runs through Kittle and Samuel. Every single defense in the league knows that. Every single defense in the league started to pick up on it late last year. This Rams team is no exception. They played them numerous times last year. I, I, they've struggled on offense. Everybody can see that. Matt Stafford is pretty much throwing to Cooper Cup and only Cooper Cup. I don't know why he doesn't use Allen Robinson more, but for whatever the sake may be, the Rams offense is struggling, but I don't think they're struggling bad enough to lose to the San Francisco team.
Slade?
Yeah, I'm going with the Rams also. You had mentioned it, Nick. Stafford's really only throwing to Cooper Cup. They have the most receptions or Cooper Cup has the most receptions through the season so far. I think that it seems like just based on he's the only person he's throwing the ball to, either he's the only one that can run around and get open, or they're really going to make a push for that record this year for QB to wide receiver receptions.
Yeah. I'm also going with the Rams again. 49ers are trash. I think the Rams are starting to click on offense a little bit. We saw them handle Arizona really well, and so I see them having no problem with San Francisco this week. So that will wrap up our NFL picks. It is time to move on to our college football review. Hopefully, Slade did a little bit better this week than he did last week. But let's get right into it. So we're just going to move into the games here. And Slade, I'll let you take back over.
Yeah, so we saw Clemson at Wake Forest. I had ended up putting a little bit on Wake Forest to cover, and then separately also for them to get the win. I was golfing, and I saw they're going into overtime. I was like, "Oh my god, I could possibly win two separate ones." But Clemson was able to get the win, like it says here. DJ Uga, we'll just keep it at that. Was 26 of
That's
41.
got to be racist. That's got to be racist. You guys call him Ooga Booga.
Oh my! I didn't say
We'll
that.
figure
I
it
said Uga. Yeah, but
You said Ooga. Nick calls him. Okay, I'm not going to stop saying it.
yeah, whatever.
Before we get our
People
page.
say my name
It
wrong,
can't be
so I
racist.
feel like it's
I mean, I
okay
guess
for
it
me
could
to
nowadays.
mispronounce people's names all the time.
I'm going to log into YouTube tomorrow. It's going to be like, no, you're done.
Yeah, no.
371 yards, 5 touchdowns was still outshined from a QB standpoint by Sam Hartman, who had 337 yards with 6 touchdowns. Over 1,000 total yards of offense. Just crazy to see. I think you both predicted this to be a big shootout. That's exactly what we saw. It came down to overtime, and Clemson was able to get the win. Um, then we saw Maryland at Michigan. I don't think that we really thought. I think Nick, maybe I think that you had said about how that this would be closer than what people were thinking, and obviously that was the case. You had Tua's younger brother go 20 of 30 with 207 yards, a touchdown, and 2 interceptions, which proved very costly. You had Michigan's running back for him, which they've now started doing the corn TikToks for, with 30 carries for 243 yards and 2 touchdowns. I mean, just a ridiculous stat line from him there. And then Maryland with 3 turnovers definitely proved
I
to be
I just
costly.
wanted to say something about this game real quick. So, obviously, we talked about how Michigan hadn't really faced anybody, big yet, and this game showed that they have weaknesses. And I think the one thing is, we talk about JJ McCarthy and how talented he is. This game showed that this Michigan team is going to rely on their run defense, and I think that's one big thing from last year. Their run offense, not their run defense. We seen last year while their passing offense wasn't, the most electrifying in the nation or anything like that. It was efficient. It was enough to move the chain so you didn't know if they were running the ball this down or not. You had to really think about it. And I think this year they've kind of taken a step back from that. And a lot of teams are going to rely more on, stopping that run. Um, ha- Really, the rest of the season is going to be up to McCarthy and how he responds to that and whether he can step up, make the throws he needs to throw. Because Maryland, while they're a talented team, they're not Penn State, they're not Ohio State, they're not Minnesota. I don't know if Michigan plays Minnesota this year or not, but nonetheless, like this is a team that competed with them, and for obvious reasons. So definitely something to watch as the season goes on.
Yeah, and the next game, Nick, I think that you had also picked Iowa State as a possible upset. We saw them with Baylor. First half looked like it was definitely something that could happen, and then in the second half, they were held scoreless until about 7 minutes left in the fourth. Um, that definitely proved to be costly. George is Decker's Iowa's quarterback.
Yes.
Okay, so the 2 interceptions is definitely another part that proved to be costly. We could have seen Maryland and Iowa State both with big upsets this weekend, but I just costly interceptions has ended up being what happened. Chapin. He was 19 to 26, 238 yards and 3 touchdowns. Definitely helped Baylor get that win. I honestly thought they were going to score more points in this game just based on how we had seen them the previous weeks, but they definitely grinded out the win.
Yeah, I'll talk about all 3 games here quick. First of all, Nick, Michigan does not play Minnesota this year.
Okay.
As far as Clemson goes, they are still not a top 5 team in my mind. DJ has played a lot better than I thought he would, and so shout out to him. I don't think he's a Heisman contender. Some people have started to throw his name out there for that. He's not in that conversation at all. But Clemson is absolutely not a top 5 team. Wake Forest should have won this game if the refs didn't hand them a loss. Um, Also, I was feeling really bad for the one Clemson player who had his little sister die, and then they cut to the stands, and his father is walking up and down the aisles, just flicking people off. So I don't feel as bad anymore. But Wake Forest deserved to win this game. They should have. And like I said, Clemson is not a top 5 team in the country. Maryland, the Maryland Michigan game, yeah, Michigan definitely showed cracks throughout their whole team, and I don't think anybody expected differently. I understand Vegas had the spread at 17 just because of how dominant their first 3 games were. But I really hope actual Michigan fans weren't sitting there going, "Oh my God, Michigan's going to go out there and just steamroll Maryland." Um, I mean, they were going to show cracks against their first real competition, but I think the score overall says more about Maryland than it does Michigan, and at least in my eyes. Again, 3 turnovers, and one of those was the opening kickoff that doinked off the dude's face mask, and Michigan recovers it, scores on the very first play. So you take that away, and this is a 27-27 game going to overtime, if not different. Um, and so in my eyes, yeah, Michigan definitely struggled. They should have looked better. I agree. But I think it just shows that much heart that Maryland has. I think this is going to be a very good team going forward. They play Michigan State at home this week. I said it in the preseason, preview when Ohio State plays them the week before the Michigan game. I am absolutely putting Ohio State on upset alert. I think Maryland is a very good team. I think Ohio State might be looking past them at that point. And so I'm calling it now. I'm circling that game in red. I'm taking Maryland over Ohio State in that game. As far as the Baylor Iowa State
It'll
game,
be a red game.
yeah, um, the Baylor Iowa State game, uh, Baylor gets the win. Good for them. I need to see more out of them. This is a team that was supposed to, dominate the Big 12 and be a potential playoff team. Their offense has not been there this year. Their defense has looked really good at times, but their offense, Shapen was coming back. Again, murmurs. I don't want to say there was talk. There was murmurs about hey, if he gets a little bit more experience and grows up a little bit, he could be in the Heisman conversation. Um, it's almost like he's taken a big step back from last year. He's consistent and he's not terrible, but he's not as stellar as what we saw last year. I don't know if that's the defense is adapting to him or what's going on, or if it's just maybe a sophomore slump for him. But he definitely needs to pick it up. They have a big game this weekend against Oklahoma State. So if this team is going to go far, they need Shapen to step up a little bit, and it's going to have to start this weekend.
Yeah. So moving into the next games.
I didn't know if you were going to talk. So
Sorry. I'll talk on this one. So we had Notre Dame at UNC. That's next. We had Pine go 24 of 34, 289, 3 touchdowns, and Esteem 17 carries, 134 yards, 2 touchdowns, and then May with 17 of 32 for just over 300 yards and 5 touchdowns. I really thought UNC was going to get the win here. Did we all 3 pick UNC?
yes,
Yeah.
So, I mean, the upset just that's right. That's right. Because Teresa was saying about how Notre Dame. Yeah. So it was definitely proved to be true, but I definitely thought UNC was going to get the win, and Notre Dame somehow found a way to start scoring on offense. And then we had Texas against Texas Tech. I had to hear about this for like 2 hours after it happened. I was
Oh, you're still hearing about it today. I don't know why you
Oh,
thought
wait,
it
you
was
still
on
owe me a
Saturday.
picture, by the way.
Yeah.
Oh yeah.
I feel like it's too late. We got to wait till the next time Texas
Yeah,
loses.
it's a bit late now.
Yeah. You have to wait till next year.
Yeah, maybe save it in the vault for later.
Next year. Okay, buddy. All right.
Yeah, so it was what we expected. We expected it to be a lot of fireworks from that standpoint. Robinson fumbling in OT definitely was
Huge
problematic
from someone that doesn't fumble.
Right. And so just to see that, I mean, was heartbreaking for me. What I thought was a really, really great game was Florida at Tennessee. We got to see College Game Day there, and they did the checkered out, and it was really cool to see. We had Richardson go 22 of 44 for 453 yards, which is just crazy to see on 24 completions, 4 touchdowns, and 1 interception. And then we had Hooker 22 of 28, 349 yards, and 3 total touchdowns, which adds up to be another 1,100 offensive yards, which that's 2 games that we've seen this past week with over 1,000 yards offensively. Just ridiculous to see. Not something that you usually think you're going to see out of 2 SEC teams, at least from my perspective, just because I feel like a lot of times it's kind of more of a defensive game in that aspect. So what was your guys' thoughts on these 3 games?
I'll go first, just so I'll let you guys get your pieces in this time. The Notre Dame game, it was good for them to get their offense on track. UNC is one of the worst defenses in the country. So it I don't know how much it says about their offense, but it, going into the next few weeks is like, hey, we know we can do this now. We know we have the players, we have the playmakers. So let's go out there and put points on the board finally. Um, as far as Drake May, I still am very impressed with him, and so far this season, stepping into um, Sam Howell's shoes, I think he's going to be a great quarterback there for at least another year. Um, 5 TDs is absolutely ridiculous. It's against a stacked Notre Dame defense, I would argue. This is a Notre Dame defense that held Ohio State to 21 points, I want to say, if I'm remembering that
Yep.
correctly. The Texas Tech game, Texas had that game in the bag. They went the halftime up 10, and they came out in the
Mhm.
second half and just shut down. They had foot off the throttle, or Texas Tech just played that much better. I don't know. But they could not get Quinn Ewers back soon enough. Hudson Card just kind of fell apart in the second half, and then you had Bijan Robinson fumbling in overtime. In the Florida Tennessee game, Florida is not this good. Tennessee's defense is just that bad, and that's very concerning. Looking at the stress they're heading into, they have Alabama in 2 weeks. Um, they should have won this game by a lot more, especially with the turnovers that AR had. Um, and then they took their foot off the throttle at the end of the game. They had Florida dead to rights. They were up 2 scores, and the next thing you know, Florida drives down. Uh, just there was nobody within 15 yards of receivers at times. Florida goes down. They get a touchdown. They get the onside kick, and they almost go down and score the game winning touchdown. That's not the mentality. That's not the team that is going to beat Alabama in 2 weeks. So they definitely have a lot to fix on the defensive side of the ball. Their offense looks good. Hendon Hooker is, in my mind, a Heisman candidate so far this year. But their defense is concerning, especially like I said with Alabama coming up.
Yeah, I don't think that they're going to win in 2 weeks anyway, whether their defense shows up or not. But Nick, what were your thoughts on these games?
Yeah. As far as the first two go, Notre Dame, like George said, glad to see that they're finally scoring points. That's a tough defense. I thought that game was going to be closer, but I also didn't see Notre Dame scoring 45. I know UNC's defense is shaky, to be very considerate to them. But Notre Dame got some leverage now, got a little momentum. Maybe they can build on it, see if they can kind of right this ship a little bit, bring the season around, and get back up to a respectable status. Texas and Texas Tech. This game was exactly how I thought it was going to go. They let Texas Tech stay around and ended up costing them the game. As far as Florida and Tennessee goes, how Florida ended up only losing this game by 5 is beyond me. Like George said, that in my opinion, this should have been a 21-point game easy. Um, Florida managed to hang around. I had high hopes for Richardson at the beginning of the season, and he's shown flashes, but it seems to that he's on his floor a lot more than he's up at his ceiling, and I think we're kind of getting to the point where I can say that comfortably. But nonetheless, shootout of a game. Tennessee looks great on offense, but that defense is a big question mark, and that's gonna, like George said, they got Bama coming up in 2 weeks, and your defense cannot have question marks, no matter what it says on paper. If you have a good game plan, you can stick with Bama. We've seen it from Texas. We've seen it from other teams in the past. But I don't think Tennessee's got that formula. So we'll see.
Yeah, I think that just the one thought I have on it is Texas, like George had mentioned, desperately needs Quinn Ewers back. And I had mentioned during the college podcast on Saturday that Texas Tech was the better team on paper and everything, but I'm on this Texas bandwagon right now, so I gotta ride it out.
I have to
They
say,
definitely need Quinn back.
George and I said that you were wrong when you said Texas is back, and I would like to apologize because you're not wrong. They're back. They're back exactly like they were last year and the year before. They're back exactly how everybody's used to seeing them.
They're
So
back in the basement.
yeah.
We'll see.
All right.
We'll see. So next, then, we had some good games here. Maybe not as close as we thought. With
Slade saw that middle game and went, "Oh, this is a good section." Oh, wait, I see the other two.
Yep. So I think that I was the only one to pick Michigan State to win that first game. Could be
Yeah.
wrong with that, but I think so. Yeah. So Minnesota with the 34-7 win. Morgan went 23 of 26, 268 yards and 3 touchdowns. Just a crazy performance to only have 3 incompletions. And then you saw Thorne with 17 to 24 for 132 yards, 2 interceptions. Definitely proved to be costly. 240 yards with a total. What the heck is that, George? Sorry. Oh, sorry.
Michigan State has 240 yards total. Minnesota had 508.
Okay. I was reading it wrong. Sorry. So yeah. So Michigan State had half the amount of yards that Minnesota had. Definitely proved to be costly with the interceptions that Thorne had. A game that I was really interested in. I thought Arkansas was going to be able to get the win here. They just weren't able to pull it out against Texas A&M. They lost 23-21. We saw Jefferson go 12-19 with 171 yards, 3 total touchdowns, and I believe it's pronounced Shane. Um, he had 19 carries with 160 yards and 1 touchdown. Arkansas did miss the winning field goal with about a minute and 30 left in that game. Did you guys get to see that game, both of you?
I got to watch a good bit of it.
Yeah. It was really interesting to see. I didn't think that Jimbo Fisher was gonna be able to close the game out there at the end, but
He shouldn't
Arkansas
have.
missing that
He
field goal.
shouldn't
Yeah,
have.
I was gonna say he tried
right.
not to. He tried.
Yeah. And then we had Iowa against Rutgers. I believe that Nick, you picked the under, right? This just
did.
passed by like what was it?
Yeah,
3
missed it
points
by
or
3
something like
points.
that. Yeah.
Yeah.
So Williams had 11 carries, 64 yards, and 1. I don't even know what that is. Sorry. I'm having a stroke right now, being tired from being up so early.
I think it was supposed to be a touchdown, but my fingers are too
Okay,
big. I hit the
alright.
F next to the D.
Alright, and then we had Simon, 28 of 49, Jesus, with 300 yards, 1 touchdown, 2 interceptions. There was 10 total punts in this game. Pinterest had a QBR of 11.6. George, I'm pretty sure you coulda did better than that.
I know. Well,
Listen,
I
I've seen
don't know if
Swift
that was
quarterback. I don't
just.
know about all that, but
I don't know if that was just Saturday, but I want to say that's his season total so far. But
would not
so
surprise me.
in that game, one of those INTs for Simon turned into a pick six. Without that, you're looking at a 2017 game, so a lot closer. I think Rutgers should have been in this game a little bit more. Unfortunately, it wasn't for them. This is still a team trying to rebuild, trying to come up. Again, I think they're going to be better than last year, just not quite there yet. Um, the Minnesota Michigan State game, I had Minnesota winning. I didn't think it was going to be this bad. I did not expect Peyton Thorne to play so poorly. He got pulled late in the second half. Um,
I
really,
don't
just
even understand
surprising.
why he's still playing. I mean, I guess they don't have any
Yeah,
better options, but I haven't seen anything from
yeah.
Thornton that's impressed me ever.
Yeah. Again, I not impressive, but I didn't think it was going to be that bad. Uh, I don't want to say Minnesota's a real deal yet, but they look very good, and I think they're probably my favorite right now to win the Big Ten West. Originally, it was Purdue, but Purdue can't even barely beat Florida A&U, or FAU, I guess. Excuse me. As far as the Arkansas game, Arkansas had every right to win that. This is almost like the Bears Texans games we were talking about earlier. Neither team wanted to win. If it wasn't for a fumbled half-ass attempt to dive across the goal line by KJ Jefferson, that Texas A&M took back for a touchdown, I think they win this game. Texas A&M's offense is terrible outside of their running back. It doesn't matter if they put Max Johnson or Haynes King in. Um, they can't throw the ball. They can only run it. A lot of people. I was listening to some guy on TikTok today. He's like, "Oh, he's ranked his top 5 games remaining this season." He goes, "Texas A&M at Alabama is going to be like the deciding game in the SEC West." It's not, because Texas A&M can't run a damn play. And I'll throw another dollar in the jar if I have to. I don't care. But their offense is terrible, and I understand why people keep hyping this team up to be good. They're not. Their defense is, outstanding, stellar. I think Alabama is still going to carve up their defense, and Texas A&M's offense sure as heck ain't scoring against Alabama's defense. Arkansas plays Alabama this week. I think it's going to be closer than, I think the spread's at 17. I think it's going to be closer than that, just because, like I said, Alabama's offense isn't anything next level, but Arkansas's offense is not very good. We just saw that this week, so I'll take a deep breath.
Yeah. So
George.
just a quick rundown. Tanner Morgan, 6-year super senior, looking legit. You should hope so after like 4 years in the same offense. Like I said, Peyton Thorne, I honestly think is one of the worst quarterbacks in the Big Ten. I don't know why he's there, but nonetheless, Arkansas, this should have been a 28-17 game. like George said, you had that fumble with the scoop and score that kind of changed the whole dynamic of the game. And even, keep that in, push it off to the side. You got to make that field goal. Um, Arkansas has been a team that has started each preseason the last couple years that I can think of at or in or near the top 25, and continue to work. And they've always been, well, maybe this is their year, maybe this is their year. If they continue to let things like this happen and fail to close out games, they're never going to get there. And last but not least, yes, I was upset. The under for the Iowa game finally missed. It was close. We were sweating it out at the end. Um, but another terrible offensive performance. How they got 27 points. I mean, I guess when your defense is stout and you're playing Rutgers, you can score 27 points. But I don't expect to see that as their competition starts to get a little heavier. So, like George said, Rutgers is in the middle of a rebuild. I think that they're going to be a decent team here in the next couple of years, but I'm getting tired of seeing Iowa every weekend. I don't even watch the games, and I still get tired of seeing them. So I can't imagine how their fans feel. Luckily, they have that end of the first quarter thing where they wave at the fans up in the hospital, which honestly, the fans waving back should be on the same level of respect because everybody on the field probably is a worse football player, at least on the offensive side, as some of the people up there. So I'm gonna I'm gonna go ahead and let us move on here. I did very well to not say anything disrespectful during that segment. So
Yeah, so moving into the last game to talk about, which would be where the college football game day should have been, which was in Kansas. We saw Daniels go 19 to 23 for 324 yards with 5 touchdowns. Uh, Leonard with 24 of 35, 324 yards with 1 touchdown. Pretty crazy. Is that stat correct that they both had the same amount of passing yards? Yeah, it is. Um, Kansas had 528 total yards in this game. It's their first 4-0 start since 2009. They won the game 35-27, and we really didn't see it. So the first half was pretty close in that it was 7-7 start, and then it went to sorry, in the second quarter it went to be 14-7, and then Duke ended up scoring a field goal, taking it to halftime at 14-10, and then no, sorry. I'm completely wrong. It was 21-13 going into the half. And so it was basically about that spread until the fourth quarter when Kansas scored another touchdown. Then Duke followed with a touchdown, and then Kansas got one more in garbage time.
Yeah. I mean, Duke showed a lot of fight in not letting Kansas run away with it. I think there was plenty of opportunities for Kansas to do that. They started off the game really hot, but Duke showed a lot of fight. They kept clawing back into this game. Kansas just kind of started to put the nails in the coffin there in the fourth quarter. I think this is a Duke team that could definitely challenge for the ACC. I don't want to quite say yet. I don't want to say they're on the same level as Clemson yet. As I think Florida State is even up there with Clemson now. But this is a much better team than we've seen in years prior. This is absolutely a team that you can't take lightly if you're in the ACC. You can't walk into Duke or have Duke come into your stadium and go, this is just an easy pushover win like it has been in years prior. This is a team that's absolutely going to challenge a lot of people and give some teams fits. Not quite at the ACC championship level yet, but I'm super excited to see where this Duke team goes. As far as Kansas, how they are not favored this week at home against Iowa State, I am not 100% sure. I've said it before. They're going to keep, I understand. There's no history with this Kansas team. The only history they have is 2-win seasons, 0-win seasons, 3-win seasons most. Um, and so this Kansas team has a lot of way to go to change people's minds. But I think Jalen Daniels absolutely deserves to be on the Heisman watch list right now. I think he is one of the best quarterbacks in the country. He's an amazing playmaker. I watched a lot of that game on Saturday. Uh, the way he can command that offense is next level. I'm super excited to see the more he continues to lead this team. Texas, Oklahoma, Oklahoma State, Baylor better watch their backs when they play Kansas. Even if Kansas doesn't win another game the rest of the season, this is absolutely a team that can threaten these high-powered teams that we think so highly of.
Yeah, so I guess the next part would be to move into how we did this past weekend with our picks, right?
Oh, yeah, I thought you guys were going to talk. Oh, I got the Jack Wagon rankings in here first.
Right. So George has been putting a lot of effort into his
We have
stats.
give
Yeah,
me all
yeah.
the credit.
And so he's compiled our top 25 for this week, and he still. I mean, I'll let you talk about it, but you talked in the group text about how you still feel that there might be something here or there that you want to tweak, but for the most part, you put this thing together in about a week and a half time. So
Yeah.
pretty crazy.
I mean, I think I just need to tweak strength of schedule and just have it updated throughout the season. But yeah, so as of right now, Kentucky is 25th. They struggled this past week with Northern Illinois, so they dropped from 19th. Mississippi State is now ranked. Illinois is now ranked at 23rd. Oklahoma State drops to 22nd, but that's just because they had the bye week. North Carolina State it jumps up into the rankings in 21st. Florida State jumps up into the rankings at 20th. Western Kentucky after blowing out can't remember what school. It was a Florida school. FIU. They blew out FIU 73 to nothing, and so now they're ranked. Utah jumps up from 23rd to 18th. Clemson falls one spot to 17th. Oklahoma 16th. Tulane 15th. They fall from 9th. They lost this past week. Washington jumps up from 18th to 14th. James Madison swaps down to 13th from 12th. Penn State jumps up to 12th. Baylor is at 11th. Kansas is at 10th, where they rightfully deserve to be. USC is at 9th. LSU jumps all the way up to 8th from unranked just because they beat New Mexico State. And Minnesota is still at 7th. Ole Miss drops to 6th. Georgia at 5. Michigan at 4. Tennessee at 3. Ohio State at 2. And Alabama is the new number 1 team. And then our updated game picks. Nick leads away at 33 and 14. Slade's at 29 and 18. I am at 27 and 20. Our cash out picks. Nick still leads that 12 and 6. I'm at 7 and 11. And Slade is at 7 and 12. So that will wrap up our college football preview. Slade's trying to get out of it, but we are going to do our top 5. It should not take long. And so let's get right into it. The top 5 this week is the top 5 most untrustworthy types of people. Slade, I'll let you go first.
You guys go first. You guys go first.
All right, Nick, you go first.
All right. So I'm sitting here looking at my notes, and I don't know if one of y'all got into it or not, since I just happened to put on the rundown thing. But I either didn't write down a number 5, or George is messing with me.
George
So,
erased it.
I didn't do it.
oh, okay. All right. Well then, I'll just go with 4 then, because apparently last night I didn't write a 5th down. So number 4, ranch on people or ranch on pizza people. I don't hate the dunking into the ranch. Like, you take the corner of your pizza, you dunk a little bit in, you take a bite. That's fine. What scares me, what makes me nervous, is the people that will take the ranch and drizzle it on there like it's a salad. Weirds me out. Not a fan of it. Number 3, this one's probably a bit obvious. I feel like everybody could have this on, but I went with racist because, like, what are you even doing anymore? There's so much other things to be concerned about other than the color of somebody else's skin. So I don't trust racists. Number 2, Andrew Tate followers. Let's be 100% honest here. We can say whatever we want. The man sounds like an absolute crackhead 75% of the time that he's talking, and the other 25% is just complete gibberish. I don't understand how this man has a following of any sort. I mean, I get it, like City Boy Summer or whatever. But let's be honest, we're all grown men here. And number 1 is bone in versus boneless wing, guys. If you choose bone in, we've talked about this before. Boneless is cheaper, it's more efficient, you get more meat. There's no reason as an adult that you should sit there and say, "Oh, I like to work for my meat and eat it off the bones." Like, just get boneless, save yourself some money, get yourself some more meat. Why you choose to go out of your way to make an inefficient decision is completely beyond me. Grow a set of balls, get the boneless wings.
All right, fair enough. I'll do my top 5 real quick. Number 5
Fired
is
up.
Cowboy fans. I mean, I think that's pretty self-explanatory. If I see you wearing a Cowboys hat, Cowboy jersey, I immediately want nothing to do with you, or I don't want to share any information with you. Number 4 is people
Sorry,
who
Mom.
don't wave back when you wave at them on the street, or even just give like that white person smile, like, and they give you no acknowledgement at all. I want nothing to do with you.
Or the
Uh,
old white person.
yeah. Number 3 is vegans.
Ooh, that's
They
a
have
good
so
one.
many rules and so much BS going on with that whole situation. It's no, I don't. If you can't understand simple research as to why some things don't affect animals the way you think it does, and you refuse to eat said product, like honey is probably my biggest one, because they insist that the beekeepers force them to rape bees, and so they won't eat honey. If you just refuse to do any ounce of research and you just believe what some TikTok influencer is telling you, I don't want to trust you. Number two, and this got Nick fired up. If you chew hard candy like Jolly Ranchers or lollipops, and I mean without like sucking on it first, if you just pop one in your mouth and instantly
Oh,
chew it,
okay.
you scare me. Like, yeah, no. If you want to like throw it in there like 30 minutes
It's
later, like
like
okay,
I'll suck on a Jolly Rancher a little bit, but Jawbreakers, I don't know why. A Jawbreaker, I'll just
yeah.
in my mouth, instant bite.
No, but like if I hand you a Jolly Rancher and I hear you crunching it instantaneously, that scares me. And you're a psychopath. I want nothing to do with that.
I won't
And
argue it.
number one is, and this is what gave me the whole idea for this list. That happened to me last week.
Hold on, right before you get started, just because I know you have this written down, your number 3 should have instantly talked you into making one of your numbers TikTok influencers. I just because you said about if you hear something from TikTok influencers, and I should have put that at least at my number 5 because like I hear TikTok influencers all the time say some dumb shit. Oh well, there's a dollar, but anyway, and it just
we're at 11
blows
now.
my mind. Yeah, we're gonna be rich.
My number one. So what happened? I was at a job site, and there was another worker there, and on the front of his van, he had a Green Bay Packers logo, and I was like,
Ooh.
"Oh man, you got something on the front of your van." And he's like, "Oh, I just put that on for the winter." I was like, "I'm a Bears fan, that's why I said something." He goes, "Oh, I like the Bears too." If you were that kind of person where if you see another rival team, you're like, "Oh, hey, I like that team too," I instantly want nothing to do with you. Either you're a fake fan or you just don't know what you're talking about, or you're just lying to appease me. And which is all three of those are scenarios which I don't want to trust you with any information at all. If I tell you I'm a Commanders fan and you're wearing a Cowboy shirt, you go, "Oh, I like the Commanders too." I want nothing to do with you.
I
And the
will
worst part
personally
was,
punch you in the face.
yeah, and the worst part was is this wasn't the first time this had happened with the Bears and Packers. There was another house. A guy had a Packers flag outside. I went, "Oh, you got to take that down if you want me to do any work." And he was like, "Oh, I'm from Wisconsin." Like, and he's like, "I'm a Packers fan." I was like, "I understand." I was like, "I'm a Bears fan." He goes, "Oh, I like the Bears too." And no, I want nothing to do with you. I don't want your
Do you
money at
think
that
it?
point.
Do you think it's to save themselves from the sob story that you have to tell them about
I don't want to tell
being
them a
Bears
sob
fan?
story. I don't want to
Yeah.
tell them. Like they should know already how depressed I am being a Bears fan. It should not be a big deal that like don't lie to me and say, "Oh, I like that team too." Like it'd be one thing if you're like a Cardinals or a Bills fan and you're like, "Oh, I like the Bears too." Like, okay, that's fine. But you can't be a Packers, Vikings, or Lions fan and be like, "Oh, I like the Bears too." You're lying. You're a traitor, and you're just an a hole.
We can throw Tom Brady fans in there too,
Yeah,
because
yeah, that's true.
yeah, no
So
explanation.
I just didn't remember to do it. I asked you guys the question, and that's why I was trying to skip it. But I do want to add on to like some of the things you guys had said. I'm sure I could be one in your guys' top 5 as one of those people that just doesn't do it. Um, but the hard candy thing, one thing I don't deal with candy, but ice in my soda. If it's fountain soda
Oh,
ice, like you know
no,
what I'm talking
ice
about,
Ice
the
ice
little
is
ice.
completely different. I'll take
Yeah.
a full
Okay.
ice scoop and chew on that. Ice is
But
complete because I
I've
want a
heard people
cold items.
say I've heard people do the same thing and say that if someone chews on ice, they're a psychopath or something like that. So
No,
that's why I was
I don't
wondering
want
what
my
your
mouth
guys' thoughts were.
freezing. Like,
Yeah.
especially if you take that right out of the freezer, you put that in your mouth. It's like freezer burn on your tongue. You gotta get that thing chewed up and down the throat as fast as you can, like a freaking prom
Down the
queen.
throat is That's sus.
It's been a sus episode today.
It has.
Yeah, but what were you
All right,
gonna say?
moving on. We will see you guys on Saturday
Whew.
morning for our college football episode. As always, our college football pregame show. We're super excited to bring that to you guys as well. We will see you next week. We will review week 5 of college football, week 4 of NFL. Um, we'll do our Western Conference preview. We'll do a little NASCAR talk as well. Hopefully this week will be better at Talladega, except the whole field's going to wreck, so we can talk about that, especially if tires blow out.
Talk about BJ McLeod and how he got a top 10.
Yeah. But we will see you guys next week. We're super excited to bring that episode to you guys as well. Hopefully you enjoyed this week. Please subscribe to our YouTube and make sure you turn on your notifications so you know when a new video is posted, and especially so you guys know when we go live on Saturday mornings so you guys can follow along with that as well. And we will see you on Saturday morning with Out of the Tunnel.